Alright, BCA-101, 11/7/16, week 11. We're a third left, about 2/3 done. Today we talked about security. We talked about all this information that's stored digitally, this data that's stored digitally. Data, we take data and we transform it into information. The information has value. Man, by now you would think the students would be good with that. Alright, so then I said we have an asset, okay? Something that has value, which in this case we're talking about is data. And then we talked about is there a threat to that asset? Okay, then is there an agent that can carry out the threat? How vulnerable are we to the threat? Could that threat happen? And then with a combination of these things, we can figure out our risk. We'll come back to that. So we went around the room, the students listed what kind of data was stored, where it was stored, a little bit of who had access and what can they do with the data. And then I asked them, is the data accurate? Do you know the data is accurate where it's stored? First thing they said, well, they talked about data being stored on a hard drive, and I said, okay, then that'd be local, your local machine. In the cloud, usually outside of your own premises. Typically, it doesn't have to be, it depends on how you define the cloud. And then a LAN server on a local server. So we spent a fair amount of time talking about this and giving lots of examples of what data, and then, I asked them, what data, what data do you think has to be secure? Or, who's going to look at what data, and so forth. And so then we moved over here. We started talking about their data is like an asset. Go this way here, right? Asset, and is there some threat against the data? A threat agent. For example, we gave the example of these large data centers built here in the Midwest. Well, they don't have to worry about hurricanes, right, destroying the data. They don't have to worry about earthquakes as much, and so forth. And probably tornadoes. Probably the biggest thing here in the Midwest. How vulnerable is the data? Okay, this could be, on the type of device, what area in is, how important is the data? Is it more vulnerable to somebody stealing it because of the value of the data? Okay, and then you figure your risk. How much risk is there? How much do you, as an example, how much do you spend to protect the data compared to the risk of something happening to it? All right. We talked about people. We talked about people and phishing, using, tricking people into giving information, like a fake website or a link to a fake website, and you fill out something that you give important information. Gotta really be careful about that. Okay, next key thing we talked about, data. Data, we gotta be concerned about where it's stored, stored on some hard drive somewheres, who has access to that hard drive. The data can be breached when it's stored. The data can be breached when it's in transit. Okay, the data is moving from one location to another, like in this scenario here. Mercy Hospital in Mason City, at least the headquarters used to be over by Detroit, Michigan, or real close to Detroit. Okay, and then when they send crucial medical information back and forth, okay, it's in transit. How protected is it? Well, we did give an example up here of a VPN. A lot of businesses, like if you're in Mason City and you wanted to connect to a store in Waterloo, okay, you could send it through the internet and use a VPN, virtual private network, and everything is encrypted between the two. We'll talk a little more about that as we move on, but we still need to understand some terminology as far as data and security. The data can be captured while it's being processed. Target, some would agree, maybe disagree, but when they had their data breach, those debit cards and credit cards were captured. And it wasn't like Target was storing that information, at least not in their, not in their stores. This happened in the stores. There was software in there that was reading the cards as they were being swiped. And how the software got in there was a problem with their HVAC security, and the hackers got into the HVAC company, which then gave them access to Target, and we put a piece of software in there that would capture that information as people were buying, actually checking out. I didn't mention in class, but there are also these covers that people will, try to trick people to have a cover that looks just like your card swipe, and they'll slip it over top of the main one, like anywhere, Menards or whatever. So when you swipe your card, you're swiping it through the main one underneath, and they're also capturing the information up above. And they'll wait until somebody isn't looking, and then they'll grab it and pull it off and take it out of the store, and they'll have that information. All right. So, I gave another example up here, Snyder Construction. I believe they're in Clear Lake. They would set up VPNs when they do construction at a site so that they could access some key information at the home site. Next step. 3 areas of data. First one we mentioned, data integrity. Can you trust the data? Is it accurate? Honest when we think of the word integrity. The data hasn't changed. That's really important. Whether it is stored, moving, or being processed, it hasn't changed. The next key thing for data is confidentiality. Who can see what data? And the same thing's true up here. Who can see it while it's being processed? Who can see it while it's in transit, and who can see the data while it's being stored. And this will lead us into encryption. Some people have to see the data. We have to make the data available. Okay? If you've got some rare disease or you have some condition and you go to the hospital, they have to know everything about you in order to be able to treat you. So you have to give them some data. People have to have your Social Security number in order to do payroll. You got to make it available. Okay, a lot of places, if you're going to sign in, you have to give them a user ID, or the driver's department's got to have your height, weight, your eye colors, and DOT, right? Department of Transportation. They got to have a bunch of stuff available to them. Got to put it on the license. Okay, is that real secure? On the license? Well, all depends how you think about it. All right, is the data accurate? Who can see the data? And we have to make it available, which causes both of those that we have to be concerned about. One more slide. So then we talked about, to finish up the day, how can we protect data? And the students discussed it among themselves. Okay. So the students discussed briefly. And then we categorized it. We have products. Devices. Devices would be like firewalls and certain devices that would protect people from getting into places to see data they shouldn't see. We have products like firewalls for on your PC, virus software. There's all kinds of products that we can use. Anybody that manages data, which is almost everywhere nowadays, must have some kind of policy for the data. Okay, what people can do with the data, what security measures have to be followed concerning the data for a company. You know, a lot of places have policies you can't be putting data on a flash drive and then walking out of the facility with it. And to work on it at home, you just can't do that. In a lot of places they have a policy. Okay? And then a lot of places also have guidelines. They're like a policy, but they're more like a suggestion of what you should follow. And we talked about it. If you hire people that with good integrity, okay, then you probably don't need as strict a policy or as many rules. How do you put the policy in place? You have procedures. You know, a simple example of a procedure would be you teach your employees how to change their password, or you teach employees, make them aware of policy procedures if something does happen, if they think there's a breach, or you you have procedures on how to manage your passwords, or you have a procedure on what you do if you get an email that doesn't look legit. You know, what do you do with it? Where do you send it? What do you do, or do you do nothing, and so forth. And then the last thing, people. Whether people are tricked into doing something wrong or they choose to do something wrong, people tend to be where most of our security issues lie. Okay? So, I guess people are hackers. I know there's a lot you can do with computers, but you have to consider the people in your organization. You know, how well you train them and how well you trust them and what they can or can't do. Remember, data confidentiality, who can see what, and so forth. All right, we finished up the day with any questions on the project. And that's it.